What's going on, everybody? I'm here to do a mini-series review for Netflix's Griselda. Now, I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to actually do a review on this. That's why the review is actually coming up pretty late, considering that this actually aired or premiered on Netflix on January 25th, and y'all are actually getting the review for this about a couple weeks after it debuted on Netflix. So Griselda is the 6-part miniseries or limited series on Netflix starring Sofia Vergara, where she plays the Queenpin Griselda Blanco. Now, many of you probably have heard her name before. If you grew up in a certain time period, you definitely heard her name. She was one of the most notorious Queenpins ever, and I do mean ever. I've actually done some research on this woman. I saw a documentary on her that absolutely just blew me away with the information and the details behind this woman's backstory and her life, and her moving up the ranks and pretty much becoming one of the most notorious and one of the most feared women in the drug game, especially when it came to dealing in cocaine. So basically, this movie actually, and let me just say right now, this review is probably going to have a little bit of spoilers in it. So if you do want to watch it, then you will probably want to bypass this review until you actually watch it. Or if you already know her backstory, you pretty much already know what's going to happen. So this actually takes place when she leaves from Colombia, where she's from, and she comes to Miami to really start her empire there. I thought the story was actually going to start when she was younger, because there is a bit of an interesting backstory with her when she was a kid, before she was even a teenager. And it's she pretty much had a rough upbringing starting out as a kid. She came from a very poor background in Colombia. She didn't have anything. So her motivation to get money and power, it probably most likely stems from her upbringing as a kid, growing up in very poor and harsh conditions. That's why I highly suggest that if you haven't done so already, to watch this documentary on Tubi called The Queen of Cocaine. And of course, there's another one out there called Cocaine Cowboys that does a very good backstory on her as well. So she comes to Colombia. She's with her boy. She has 3 older sons from one of her marriages. And she brings them all to Miami. And all she wants to do is try to sell this product. I'll just leave it like that. She tries to sell this product, and she's trying so badly to do it. And the thing is, it's hard for her to do because she is a woman trying to enter into a realm and into a world that's heavily dominated by men. Like, that particular industry is very heavily male dominated. So she's literally taking risks to step into the lion's den to try to play with the big boys, and none of them are taking her seriously, especially a woman that's coming from Colombia. So they really don't take her seriously. So she has things working against her, but she is determined, and she knows that the product that she has is top notch. She knows that what she has is working for her. She ends up going to a club. She ends up running into some people that, could probably get her foot in the door. She says she has the best cocaine that you will ever have on your market. They, of course, take a whiff of it. They like what it is. They try to play it like they're going to cut her in on a deal, but then they keep giving her the runaround. They basically said that we're not going to work with you and all types of stuff like that. Even so much as far as she gets assaulted in the parking lot of that club, and the person takes her coke away from her and then tries to sell it as their own. And now she's just like in this predicament. Like, now this is the only thing I had left to make some money so I could provide for my kids, because we're not living in the best conditions right now. We have to live with my friend who's a travel agent. She had to take a job in a travel agency in order to make some money, but she knew that wasn't her. Working a 9-to-5 was definitely not her the move or the way for her to actually be a part of. So she just knew that wasn't going to work very long. So she knew she had to find a way, and she says, I have to try to sell this 1 kilo of cocaine so I can make some money. And she just knew what she had was top notch, but nobody out there was trying to give her a chance. She even went as far as, when to get her coke back, she went and beat this guy with a bat and took her stuff back and kept it moving. Like, that's just how ruthless she was. And if they did a little bit of a backstory on her, you will understand how she became so ruthless even up to that point. And that was just the tipping point of how ruthless she was. But not to give all the details of the story away, or the of the miniseries away, they basically show her moving up the ranks. They show her moving. She used the travel agency to her advantage in order to bring the women in, because she imported women into the states in order to help transport or move her product around. And the way she did it is that she had some seamstress abilities, where she was able to take the bags of coke and stitch it into the lining of the bra of the women, so they can basically transport it around to wherever it needed to be for people to buy it. Because you got to think, back in the 70s and 80s, there was no heavy security at these airports, so they didn't do the pat down thing. They didn't have TSA like we do today, so it was very easy for them to move. It wasn't heavy surveillance, so it was very easy for them to maneuver and to move that product around like that. And using women was the perfect thing, because most of the buyers were men, especially a lot of rich white men. So she knew who to go to and how to present this product to people. And like I said, she used the travel agency in order to basically import the women in from Colombia, and then they would do it that way. And of course, again, she kept getting undercutted over and over again. And as I'm watching, I said, they're building up this woman's villain arc. They're building up her villain arc, and when she gets to that boiling point, it's pretty much no holds barred back. And basically, Griselda Blanco becomes the ruthless person that, if you know the story, who she became, all the way up pretty much until she lost pretty much her empire, which was when she ended up going to jail. There's a lot of death in this movie. She takes out quite a few people, a couple of people, because a lot of the times the people who she hired as her henchmen were the ones she just basically said, hey, I want you to take out this person, I want you to take out that person, I want you to take out that person. And she made sure that the job was done, and she was very unapologetic about it. And they went and took out the people, and you better went and go and did what she told you to do, because if you didn't, she probably would have took you out. One of the craziest parts about this movie, or this miniseries, was probably, I think, in episode 4 or 5. I can't remember which one it was, but it was the one where they had the party for her husband, whose name was Dario. And she just went ballistic. Like, it was at this point right now, she knew the feds were on her, but she didn't know who to trust. She couldn't really trust anybody. She swore there was an informant in the ranks, and she just did not know who to trust. In that party scene, she literally, she gave her husband Dario a gift, and the gift was this gold plated Uzi, like, fully loaded and everything. She gave it to him as a gift, and she just like having fun at the party and everything like that. But remember, I tell you, she's very paranoid, so she's trying to hide her paranoia while trying to pretend to have a good time. She just happens to walk in the room and sees her husband talking to one of the ladies, and she automatically thinks that they're talking about her or plotting on her, or maybe at worst that her husband was cheating on her. Like, she had that thought on her mind, and then all of a sudden she went and chased that woman out of the house. She got that gold-plated Uzi that she got for her husband as a gift, pulled it out of the case, cocked it back, and went and was about to shoot at the woman, at the car. But I think she actually shot his car. No one was in the car, but she went after her too, but she already had drove off. When she came back into the party, she just started going off on anybody that she saw in her scope. And this is when it got real crazy. Again, like I said, spoiler alert coming in. At that party, I kid you not, she actually made one of the guests strip. I'm talking about take everything off. She said, take your shirt off, take your pants off, take your underwear off, because she wanted to make sure that they weren't wearing a wire. She told him to get down on all fours, and mind you, she has the gun pointed direct, like at his head. And she told him to get down on all fours and start barking like a dog, and he barked like a dog. She saw two other people. She saw one of the girls and another guy, and then she says, you two, where do you think you're going? She said, I want y'all to take all your clothes off. Now, mind you, this is a party, y'all. It's people still there. She tells them to take all your clothes off, and she tells the woman to take her dress off, the man to take all his clothes off, and they did. And she says, all right, go right over here, and I want you to fuck her. She literally made this man screw this random woman just because she was paranoid. And then she pointed the gun back at the other guy who she had on all fours. She said, did I tell you to stop barking? And he started barking some more because he thought that he was supposed to stop. But she didn't. It was almost like a Simon Says type of thing, but it was a Griselda Says, and you better had did what she said, because she was prepared to pull that trigger. Then all of a sudden her friend comes back, the one with the travel agency, to come back and tell her that the cops approached her about something, and then all of a sudden she went ballistic on the friend. She went and almost choked the friend to death. It took her husband to pull her off her friend and basically, tell her about herself, and then the husband ends up leaving. Fast forward, the friend with the travel agency ends up going to the police and saying, hey, now I'm ready to talk, because she wasn't going to say anything. She wasn't going to snitch on her. But when she saw that and saw that that friendship couldn't be mended after that, that's when she went and snitched on her and basically was telling her about the whole operation. That whole scenario, that whole thing right there was just crazy. But the thing is, it's so much more that happens just beyond what I just said. That's like episode 5. Remember, there's like 4 other episodes before it and 1 more right behind it, right after it. But that was just one of the standout things for me that just sticks in my mind. It's so much more for me. Like I said, Sofia Vergara gave a very, very great performance in this. This movie is, let me just give you a forewarning, like a disclaimer right now. I should have probably gave it sooner. If you do choose to watch this movie is like 90% in Spanish and like 10% English. There are subtitles that are there, but the thing is, to keep the authenticity, so Griselda's primary language was speaking Spanish. So to keep it authentic, Spanish, of course, was her first language, so she didn't speak English that much unless she was dealing with people who did speak English. So that's pretty much how that played itself out right there. There were some things that were left out of the movie, especially since someone such as myself watched the documentary about her. Like, we didn't get any mention, like no mention of Pablo Escobar. Now, Pablo Escobar, of course, was one of the biggest kingpins, drug kingpins ever. He was like the male version of her. He basically is her protege. He came in through her. She was the one that discovered him, and he got so big to the point where he almost topped her. But if you know the story behind that, she, in a way, she wasn't about to let all of that happen. I think in a way she kind of tried to undercut him, but that's another story for another day. Also, there's also a story that she used to date this black guy. They didn't talk about that story either. So like, there was a lot of jumping around that they did with this, that to the point where they left stuff out. I think it probably would have served better if this was an actual series that had seasons, rather than a limited series where you kind of try to condense everything into, like, because this part right here that this miniseries talked about, it only talked about her life in Miami when she left Colombia and went to Miami, which of course she was already in the drug game thanks to her first husband, because they were running it together. And this of course was after she came here to from Colombia, after she killed her husband, because her husband had made her basically prostitute herself out to pay off a debt, and that was the crazy part. Her husband prostituted her out to sleep with his brother to pay off of a debt that he accrued. I told you, it's a crazy thing. And she ended up killing her husband, although I don't think that's necessarily how the story went, based on, again, the documentary that I watched. But one thing we do know is that she ended up killing her husband. As a matter of fact, she killed both her husbands, because one of them she took out because he had took her their youngest son, who was still alive. Mind you, she had 4 sons, but 3 of them are dead. The 3 oldest ones are dead. She only has 1 living child, and that's her youngest son. But the second husband, or the husband that she was married to, ended up leaving her again because she kept getting paranoid, left her, took the child with them to Colombia, found out where he was. Mind you, she was in jail by this time. Found out where he was, took the child back, and then ended up killing the husband. Now, the story, how it's played out in the miniseries, might be a little bit different than how it played out in real life, but we know that the husband is dead and they got the son back and brought him back to the States. Again, she had eyes and ears everywhere, no matter where she was. But like I said, this probably would have fared better as a series with ongoing seasons. That way you can touch on every aspect of her life leading up to her demise, when of course she ended up dying in 2012. She was, I believe, at a store in Colombia, because she went back to Colombia, and she was walking out of a store and somebody rolled up on her and basically shot her, basically execution style, in a way that she had her henchmen do her enemies back when she was running things. Like, rolled up on her, just shot her, and drove off. And to this day, mind you, this is in 2012, to this day they never found her killer. and at this point they probably never will. So it's, in a way, it's almost like all the stuff that she's done was kind of a karma type of thing that came back on her tenfold. And that's pretty much it, y'all. Like I told you, this was a mini series review. I told you there was going to be spoilers there. I pretty much spoiled a pretty major scene in the movie or the miniseries. How true that is of that happening like that, I'm not entirely sure. Again, I can only go off of what was put out there. But yeah, but one thing we do know for certain is that Griselda Blanco is going to go down as one of the most ruthless, most feared, most dangerous women to ever live, not just here in the States but also abroad. Like, her name rung bells back in the 70s and 80s, especially if you was living in Miami. And then of course her story continues to go on and on. And like I said, she basically carried herself in a certain way where she was going to get respect whenever she demanded it. And if you crossed her or thought you was going to, she was going to cross you out of existence. And that was just how it was. So y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comment section. Is this a film, or should I say a miniseries, that you would check out? Have you heard of Griselda Blanco? Were you familiar with her before I did this review? If not, again, I highly suggest watching Cocaine Cowboys or the Queen of Cocaine. Oh, and one more thing before I actually get out of here. There's actually been a lawsuit that her youngest son, I believe her youngest son's name is Michael Corleone Blanco, and of course, you know, if you know Michael Corleone, if you know The Godfather, you know that was Marlon Brando's no, not Marlon Brando's character. I think that was Al Pacino's character. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. He took out a lawsuit against Sofia Vergara and I believe Netflix, because as you can see right here on your screen, it says that they used the images and likeness without the permission. So basically through the estate, that's how he's able to do it. But as you can also see, it says the estate filed the lawsuit on January 17th, which was 8 days before Griselda was released on Netflix. And my thing is this: I understand that that's what he wants to do, but my thing is he had to have known this movie was being, this miniseries was being filmed months ago. It's not like they just started filming it. Why take out the lawsuit now and not then when they started doing this? So that's going to probably be a thing that's going to come up. And like I said, it's already been airing on Netflix for well over, by the time y'all see this, well over 2 weeks now. So I don't know how far this lawsuit is actually going to go. I don't know what kind of strings they're going to have to pull if they want this lawsuit to continue going forward, but I don't see it really going very far to me. But then again, I'm not a legal expert, so that's just me just guesstimating. If someone can let me know down in the comments if they actually have a case, y'all let me know down in the comments. Another controversial thing that I heard, and I heard this one like a couple days ago, was a lot of people were upset with Sofia Vergara playing her because Sofia Vergara was seen as very attractive or too attractive to play this role, whereas Griselda Blanco wasn't seen as aesthetically pleasing. I heard people saying, why didn't they cast a quote-unquote ugly woman to play her? And I'm like, okay, I don't know how a person would receive that if they went into the casting room and say, oh, you're not ugly enough, or we want an ugly woman to play this part. I think they actually did the transformation pretty well for Sofia, because Sofia Vergara, if you followed her career, she's always played the spicy Latina. She's always played like the pretty woman. I first saw her when she was in Soul Plane. That was the first time I ever really saw her. Then I seen her pop up in a couple of Tyler Perry movies, but she's always been glammed up. She was always attractive. So to actually see her look more run down and kind of beaten, not beaten up, but you know, not glammed up, for me, that's a transformation. And she was able to portray the role to the best of her abilities. It's not like they had to teach her how to speak this language. She already knew how to speak it. So her Spanish was very fluent. As a matter of fact, I think this is the most Spanish I've seen her speak in any role that she's been in, even though she, I believe, is from Colombia herself. So that's some more authenticity there, because I believe she is from there. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about her actual place of origin, but I thought that was a pretty dumb, controversial take, but that's what the people put out there. But other than that, the miniseries was pretty decent. Like I said, I had the parts that I liked. Some things I wish they could have done more, like such as making this a full-on multi-seasonal series instead of a condensed mini limited series, because she has a lot of story to tell if they're going to put it in this format. But thankfully you have the documentaries, you have Cocaine Cowboys and all of that stuff that you can watch to get the full backstory behind her, and then you can look at this and compare and contrast and say this was there, this was there, oh this wasn't there, this wasn't there either, and just make the decision for yourself. But with that being said, y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.